Hey friends, I'm Jill Castle, a pediatric dietitian, mom to 4 kids, and host of this podcast. I started this podcast in 2016 as a way to help families and healthcare professionals learn more about nutrition and feeding kids. My goal has always been to make nourishing your families easier through breaking down science into understandable concepts you can put into practice right away, and shedding light on and improving the emotional well-being of kids through feeding and food. You can always go deeper on my website, thenourishchild.com, where I have resources for children ages birth through teen. I'm always so grateful you're here, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Nourish Child Podcast, a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of growing a healthy child. Here's your host, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert, Jill Castle.
Hi, friends, and welcome back to the Nourish Child Podcast. I'm Jill Castle, your host, and today we are in our third episode of our summer series called The Best Of. We've talked about extreme picky eating. We've talked about the best of becoming a good food parent. And today we're talking about brain development. Now, I've done a couple of episodes on brain development, and I will talk about those and tell you what those are a little bit later in the show. But I wanted to give you an update on a really interesting article that came out in Nutrients in 2021. And it's all focused on nutrition and neurodevelopment and cognitive function in infants and young children. So it's an update, and I thought I would kind of walk through that with you and try to translate it into some more understandable language. It gets a little bit mind-boggling, brain-boggling, if you will. But the overarching theme of this review article is that really emphasizing that nutrition is totally critical in supporting healthy brain development early in life. And that happens so early, and nutrition is so critical that the authors say that there can be long-lasting and sometimes even irreversible effects on children's brain development and their mental health if they don't get a wide variety of nutrients. And we'll talk about what some of those nutrients are. We know that the brain's structure and its ability to learn and remember and understand and relate emotionally, this is all formed relatively early in life, before the age of 3, if you can believe it. So when we don't focus on nutrition and the brain and making sure that we are paying attention to nutrition during this important stage of life, there can be negative long-term consequences. And these can filtrate into education potential, work potential, and mental health. So I'm going to get on my little bandwagon a little bit here, because I know a lot of people will downplay nutrition and they'll downplay nutrients and say that we should be focused on emotional well-being of children, and we shouldn't pay so much time and attention on food and on nutrients. But I'm going to take the stand I've always taken, and that is nutrition does matter. It's very important in the first 3 to 5 years of life. It's important throughout all of life. But when we're talking about potential of our children, we're talking about the first 1,000 days, which is the time a woman gets pregnant up until a child is 2 years of age. But we also know from other research that there's a lot going on with brain development up till age 3. So what are we talking about in terms of nutrients? We're talking about fat. So I've said it before on other episodes that, the brain is very demanding and wants fat in the diet in those early years. And good fats like polyunsaturated fats, what we call MUFAs, monounsaturated fats, and we know elements like DHA and arachidonic acid, or AA, are critical for normal brain formation and for making that fatty sheath along the neurons in the brain so that the rapid communication between the brain cells can happen. We also know that DHA is needed for vision. So children who are dependent on DHA to form their retina, which is what helps us see, it helps our vision. There have been some research that indicates high DHA levels before a baby is born, so during pregnancy, and after a baby is born, seems to be related to improving cognitive skills from processing and attention to overall IQ up to 12 years of life. So DHA has some really significant role for our children beyond that 3 years of age or 5 years of age, well into the middle school years. But where do we find DHA? Certainly we can find DHA in supplemented products like eggs and milk, but they're also in fish. And we know lots of kids don't love eating fish. Should we supplement DHA? Well, there's a lot of question mark around that when you look at research. There's no conclusive research that shows that DHA is going to have a direct effect on cognitive abilities or how well a child can see. However, other studies have shown improved language, better executive functioning skills, especially when DHA is paired with AA or arachidonic acid. So fat is really important. And if you can pay attention to the fat in your child's diet, certainly don't go fat-free, but you can pay attention to the fat in the overall diet, but also try to work in fish. If you're not introducing fish to your baby or your young toddler, I hope this message, this podcast, helps put a little spur or a reminder to start bringing that into your child's diet and start experimenting with different types of fish. Other types of fat that's getting a lot of attention in the research right now, what is called polar lipids. These are things like phospholipids and sphingolipids. They make up cell membranes, and they're also found in our circulation. Human milk or breast milk and cow's milk contain fat in the form of fat globules. And the polar lipids that you'll find in these fat globules are phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylethanolamine, phosphatidylinositol, phosphatidylserine, and sphingomyelin. Those are mouthfuls to say, and I might have even pronounced some of those incorrectly. But we're not only just looking at the total fat anymore or the healthy fats. There's more research that's coming out that shows that the fat globule itself has some special lipids called polar lipids that may have a cognitive benefit for children. These are certainly nutrients that are getting new attention for brain development, something to put in your back pocket and be aware of. Certainly, if your child is drinking cow's milk as part of their diet, these elements would be present there. But again, this is such new research and sort of a new horizon for brain development and nutrition that it's something that we can kind of keep our eyes and ears open and listening for. But there aren't any super clear recommendations for adding these specific nutrients to the diet. Kids change a lot. Their nutrition needs, eating habits, and food preferences do too. So much so, it can be hard to keep up. The Nourished Child, a website designed for parents who want more nutrition education, helps parents like you get crystal clear on raising good eaters. We've cracked the code on nourishing the whole child, whether you're raising a baby, a teen, or a child with health concerns. Our nutrition school and parent education programs help you get the inside scoop on food and nutrients, positive food parenting, and building self-motivated, autonomous kids who are good eaters. Visit thenourishedchild.com today. I think overall the message when it comes to fat is do not restrict it, don't limit it. Try to include different types of fat in your child's diet. So obviously, if you're nursing or breastfeeding, About 50% of breast milk is made up of fat, so you're covered. So is infant formula. It is that way. It's really when we wean children off of breast milk or infant formula and we transition to cow's milk or perhaps other alternative milks that we can run into trouble. So, for example, some of the plant-based milks are very low in fat. So that would not be ideal for an older infant or a young toddler, for example. Another nutrient to pay attention to when we're talking about brain development is iron. And iron is essential for energy production, oxygen transportation, and the creation of DNA. It plays a crucial role in the development and production of neurotransmitters such as dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. I had Dr. Michael Georgieff on the show last season. I believe it was episode number 158. And he is an expert in iron and its impact on brain development. A fascinating interview. So I encourage you to go back and listen to that one if you want to learn more about iron and brain development. Zinc. Zinc is necessary for central nervous system development. We hear about zinc typically around the immune system, cold season, zinc lozenges, and that sort of thing. But zinc is very important to brain development. And if there is a deficiency, there's research that shows a deficiency during pregnancy or even early infancy is associated with developmental deficits, such as a harder time learning, a harder time paying attention, remembering things, and mood. Another nutrient that's getting attention is iodine. Again, we think about iodine and hypothyroidism or goiters, but it also plays an important role in brain development. Mild to moderate iodine deficiency in pregnancy can affect a baby's behavior and their risk for the development of ADHD. So again, we get iodine in our salt. We want to make sure we're using salt that has iodine fortified, iodized salt. But again, this is another nutrient we're not talking about too much, but it's certainly getting more attention in the research. And there is a direct connection between iodine and brain development. Other nutrients are things like vitamin A, vitamin B12, folate, vitamin D. They are well recognized in the scientific literature for their capacity to influence early brain development. So I guess the take-home message here is that a deficiency of nutrients is harmful to a child's cognitive development, their brain development, their intelligence. But there's mixed reviews and mixed feelings about supplementing these critical nutrients. They just haven't drawn the straight and narrow line that if you supplement, then you will have a positive benefit. So I know that can be really frustrating, but I think the overarching message that I want you to have is that nutrition is important. The foods that we offer our children do matter and are important. And I'm not saying this to make anyone feel guilty, but paying a little bit more attention, if we can, to a wide variety of foods. That is probably the best safety net we can create when it comes to feeding our kids. It is unlikely that one nutrient will be the magic bullet to make your child have normal brain development or be the smartest in the classroom. It really is a well-rounded diet that provides all the different nutrients that children need to grow and develop. And so again, to keep it simple, it's getting back to those basic food groups that are categorized based on the nutrients that they offer. So we know the protein group is going to offer those brain nutrients like iron and zinc, choline, vitamin B12. So paying attention to making sure that we get a variety, that we get all the food groups on the plate for our children, but then also within those food groups, making sure we're getting variety, we're switching things up, not offering the same foods day in and day out. So if you want to learn more about brain development and get a little deeper into it, you can go to episode number 95, which is called The Toddler Brain. And I did that episode with Dr. Laura Jana. She is an expert in child development and a pediatrician. She talks about brain development in the first 5 years and how you can establish a strong foundation for physical and emotional growth in your child. She gives some great advice on how to stay in the know on early childhood development and how to encourage good habits for the long run. Again, don't forget episode number 158 with Dr. Michael Georgieff. He's the iron expert, and it's a great interview. He really gives you a really good sense of what iron does, why it's important, and what happens when there's not enough in your child's diet. And then also, I did a while back an interview with Dr. Bob Murray on brain development in early childhood, and that was episode number 78. And we talk about how a baby's brain develops in the first months of life, why parents should focus on the whole nutrition package. Again, not just one nutrient, but what whole food can offer your child, and then what you should keep in mind when you're creating your baby's meals. We also discuss feeding approaches and societal feeding trends we think that parents should be wary of. Again, I'm going to include all of the links to those episodes in the show notes over at thenourishchild.com, episode number 165 or /165. You can also go to your podcast tool and you can look back at all the different episodes and find some of these episodes there. So the bottom line and what I want to leave you with is you can't just pay attention to feeding and connection and forget about food and nutrients. And you can't just pay attention to food and nutrients and forget about connection and attachment and feeding. It's all dovetailed and intertwined, and both are equally important. And so that's what I want to leave you with. I don't want you to forget about the importance of nutrients and nutrition, especially if you have a child under the age of 5 years of age. So that's it for today, friends. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to rate and review it on your favorite place where you listen to podcasts. I hope you're having a wonderful summer. We are well into July now, and in September, we'll start back up with our regular season of video interviews and audio interviews and expert guests. But for now, I hope you're enjoying the Best of Summer series. And don't forget to give that child in your life a loving squeeze today. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Nourished Child Podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child inside and out.